my love for the ocean, I would be long gone by now. It's some kind of devotion that brings me down. That without my love for the ocean, I will be no one, no
Now that the thrill of Universal Studios is behind us, we've settled into a cozy Airbnb that will be our land-based home for the next month as we wait for our new boat. Jumping straight into theme park life was a jolt to the system. Crowds, lines, and the constant buzz of activity. It reminded us just how far removed we've been from the world during these past 9 months of sailing. But what's been even more striking than the hustle and bustle is the overwhelming consumerism that seems to saturate everything. At first, we totally leaned into it, grabbing the foods we've missed, picking up some long-awaited items, and enjoying a bit of the convenience we haven't had in a while. But after a few days, the excitement faded and was replaced with a sense of overload. All the excess just felt heavy. So as we prepare for our next big chapter aboard a new boat, we're shifting our focus back to what really matters to us, experiences over things. Of course, we still need to grab a few essentials to outfit the new vessel, but beyond that, we're trying to keep things simple and intentional. With this transition period, it's also been trickier to create the usual action-packed content. So instead, we're going to share more personal reflections, specifically what we've learned through the process of buying and selling boats. We hope it's helpful, insightful, or at the very least, interesting for anyone dreaming of this lifestyle. Hey everybody, we are here in Hollandale, Florida, at our Airbnb, where we're going to be staying for 3 to 4 weeks, maybe longer, while we wait to see if the Vision 444 that we have under contract is going to end up working out for us. And while we've been here, we have been doing a lot of reflecting about what we have learned from the boat buying and selling process. So our first experience was filled with uncertainty and a lot of second guessing. From the beginning, we originally thought we were going to buy a brand new Outremer 45. Connor and I were convinced that that was the right boat for us. We even put one under contract and we're in line for the build out. And we started worrying that maybe it wasn't the right boat for us when we started calculating how much weight we could have on the boat. At that time, we reached out to a broker and they convinced us that we needed a much larger boat. They talked a lot about this being your home, that you're going to be living on it 24/7. And although we thought we were pretty, rugged and outdoorsy, they were asking us questions like, well, how long have you ever really lived in your camper van? You certainly haven't lived in it for a year. And we're like, yeah, you're right. We haven't. You're probably right. So we followed their recommendation. We canceled our contract on the Outremer 45 and we went out looking for a 50 to 60 foot catamaran that lived like a floating condo on the water. And our time frame had already been set as to when we wanted to depart Idaho and start living full time. So it was a pretty rushed situation. If you have watched our previous videos, you know that we literally left Idaho, we went to France, we went to Spain, and we went to the BVI, and we went to the USVI to look at 4 catamarans that filled this need that we thought we had to fulfill. We found the big dog, which was the 62-foot Leopard that we loved dearly, and we enjoyed our 9 months on her. But the buying process was really stressful and it ended up costing us a lot of money because I didn't pay attention well enough to the signs that that I was second guessing because I wanted to trust our broker. I myself am a realtor and am very familiar with the sales process. I have helped a lot of people buy or sell their home, and I wish in hindsight that I listened to the red flags that were being presented and discussed that with our yacht broker. And I didn't, because I felt like I was overstepping my bounds and doing his job for him. So one thing to think about when buying a boat is that a lot of the times you're not operating within one state or one country, and so you are dealing with laws, regulations, and ways of doing business that might not always align with each other. And when you are buying and selling homes, you are working with a licensed broker who has to operate under a certain code of ethics. They have to be licensed. They have to take yearly educational classes to stay up to date with everything that's going on. And if there is a fallout, it's handled within the state or the National Association of Realtors. In the boat brokerage world, you do not have to be licensed, you don't have to be accredited, and it's kind of like the Wild West, especially when you are buying and selling boats that are in different countries. So for us, we were represented by a broker out of Florida, and we were buying a boat in the BVI with a broker who was in the BVI. And right off the bat, I feel like we were being told things by either the selling broker or the seller that were not true, but were being presented to us by our broker, like, oh, this is great. This is gonna easily transfer over, your insurance is just gonna transfer over, the charter license of the boat is just gonna transfer over. And we found out after closing that that wasn't the case. There were charter contracts on the boat that had received deposits that weren't conveyed over to us, but we still had to operate these charters for people who had paid money to have an awesome vacation in the BVI. There were repairs that were done on the boat, and upgrades that were committed to us that were going to be on the boat, like a new battery bank, that were on the boat when we took delivery of her, but were not paid for. And so after the fact, we ended up having about $50,000 in charter contracts that were not accounted for, and we had probably another $23,000 worth of unpaid expenses on the boat that we had to figure out. Our broker's word of advice to us at the time was, well, just reflag the vessel somewhere else and leave. And we both come from the construction business. We come from a small town where your reputation is everything. So the last thing we felt like doing was leaving unpaid bills on a boat that we owned. Just so you know, if you do have bills on a boat that you're not paying, they can confiscate your boat until you make payment, if you were to ever go back to that country. So yeah, we could leave the BVI, we could reflag our vessel somewhere else, not pay the poor guy who did the work on our boat, but if we were ever to come back to the BVI, they could seize our boat for lack of payment. Anyhow, we're from a small town. We have dealt in relationships all of our life running a residential construction company. You just don't go around hiring people to do work for you and then not paying them. That's just bad all around, and we weren't willing to do that. So we made it right with the vendor and the BVI who didn't get paid, and our broker ended up stepping up and paying for the charter deposits that were not conveyed to us at closing, primarily because a link to those contracts were sent to our broker, but he never forwarded them to us. So it was his fault, and I think he did the right thing there. But part of the problem was that he overlooked something that was pretty significant and that he shouldn't have. And I would attribute a lot of that to the fact that he was on the opposite side of the world from us, so our time frames were not aligned. Like when I wanted to talk to him, he was asleep. When he needed to talk with us, we were asleep. And that causes problems when you're doing business, because there is a time frame that's in play and you have to respond by, a deadline. And just because one person decides to be on the other side of the world from where they're conducting business doesn't mean that you get an extension. And so that was another red flag for me that I should have listened to. And overall, it just felt really rushed, and I felt like our broker was just like, yeah. It's fine, you're gonna love this boat, everything's gonna work out. The seller, like, he's a good guy, he's gonna take care of them. I asked to make sure that all of these bills had been paid, and my broker said, yes, they've been paid. The seller says they've been paid. I felt in my gut like, hey, should we get a receipt? And our broker's response was, hey, I know the seller's broker, he's a good guy, he says they're taken care of, it's all good. And I just left it at that. And that's my fault. Like, I know better, but I was trying to not micromanage the deal or the situation, and it ended up costing us in the long run. So there's that. And then I think the last thing was that our appraisal came in low, like $100,000 lower than what we were under contract to purchase the vessel for. And I brought that up with our broker, and his response was, oh, well, the surveyor did a terrible job. Mind you, this is a surveyor that he found and said was a qualified surveyor and was going to do a really good job. And then he asked me to call the surveyor and argue the valuation and bring it back up, which didn't make sense to me, because if you're buying a home and you're, let's say, getting a loan to purchase that home and it comes in under the value to purchase, either the buyer has to bring in that cash or you renegotiate the price. So I had expected that we would renegotiate the price, and that didn't happen either, because the surveyor was convinced to increase the price of the vessel on the survey report. And that extra value was added by putting a artificial number on the charter business that we were buying, because we were buying this boat and it was going to have a season's worth of charter income that was going to go back into our pockets and make everything whole and beautiful again. And if anybody who's ever operated or owned a boat knows, you're pretty much just covering your costs unless you're doing a really good job or maybe not operating on a 20-plus-year-old boat. So from the moment we took possession of the Leopard 62, I felt like there was just kind of negative energy and negative vibe for us, and probably more so for me, because I was pretty disappointed in myself for not listening to my gut and doing what I thought should be done in that transaction.
So that brought us to our next experience with buying and or selling a boat, and that was selling a Big Lost. We ended up, in a way, randomly coming across this other family that started talking about her sister ship being for sale, and one thing led to another, which led us to selling Big Lost. And then moving into that situation, given how our first experience went, Kelly and I thought, to be completely honest and forthcoming regarding our vessel, we tried to share every single thing that we could think of that was an issue that we had repaired, basically the complete history of the vessel that we knew of it. And that being said, we think it went very, very well. They, I think, felt that we were completely honest and transparent through the sale of the boat. We felt good about it because we disclosed everything that we could think of. There was things here and there, there's a lot to a boat, so there were things here and there that weren't disclosed right up front, but as Kelly and I remembered things, we made sure to disclose them right away to the broker. And I think it went really well.
I just want to add that I think by disclosing everything, sharing our logbook, giving them receipts for things that we've purchased on the boat, sharing our experiences, and the fact that we had a YouTube channel where they could go back and literally watch everything that we've done on the boat for the past 9 months was really helpful. It helped build trust. And, you know, while the world is a really big place, we have found that the boating community feels really small. So the chances are we're going to come across a lot of these people again in our journeys as we sail with our family. And we want those relationships to be pleasant relationships, and we hope to come across the buyers of our boat out there and, you know, have a sundowner with them. And I think that everything ended well. We're friends and they're happy with the boat. We're happy with the sail. And that's just good for everyone involved.
They actually continually message me about little things that they may or may not understand in the vessel, and I'm absolutely happy to respond all the time, no matter how big or small it is. I'd rather they don't have any anxieties about the boat, and if I can help alleviate anything or create better understanding based on my experience, it's the right thing to do.
And we want to help them have their best experience, because when we got the Leopard, there was a captain on the boat, and while they helped us when we needed, it wasn't like they were overly communicative as to how to take care of things on the boat, to the point where we didn't really want to reach out to them unless it was like a dire situation or we thought we were going to break something on the boat. And we had wished that we had had a lifeline when we stepped aboard her, somebody who could help us troubleshoot things or figure stuff out, because, you know, we don't do this every day. Every boat is different, and it's just nice to have a helping hand every now and then. So if you're in the market to buy or sell a boat, I just wanted to put out there to the world things to look for so that you can make sure that you hire a competent broker who has your best interests at heart. A good broker, whether a yacht broker or a real estate broker, should be looking out for your best interests at all times, more so than, you know, making a commission off of you or making a deal. They need to be willing to walk away from any deal at any time if it's in your best interest, 100%. So if you are not getting that vibe from that person, then you probably shouldn't be working with them. They should be focused on creating trust with you and loyalty with you by being 100% honest, looking for exactly what it is that you want to find out of a boat, and representing your best interests. And that means disclosing adverse material facts, and communicating honestly and eliminating any unethical practices. They shouldn't be talking disparagingly about their colleagues, and they should be representing a level of professionalism and expertise, and adhere to some type of code of ethics, regardless of whether or not they're required to or not. On top of that, I think it makes sense to look for a yacht broker who is a certified professional yacht broker or an international yacht broker. Because although this isn't required, it shows a level of professionalism in the sense that they were willing to go through that certification process and how they represent themselves to their clientele matters. I think another important thing to look for is a good brokerage, a brokerage who is managing their agents and teaching them a code of ethics and has a good track record. Like, you want to make sure that they have experience actually selling and buying boats for their clients, that they have testimonials from other clients about their experience, and are willing to keep you informed on the process, no matter how long it takes to buy a boat or sell a boat. Even if you choose to never buy a boat, they should still be operating within your best interest at all times. And in our third experience of looking to buy a boat, we reached out to our friend Kevin Klingus, who lived in our hometown with us for a long while, has a ton of experience in sailing a multitude of different vessels, has done ocean crossings, is passionate about sailing and boats in general, and he's been willing to help us with whatever, whenever, and is just available to us at all times. And he works for a brokerage called the Catamaran brokerage out of Florida under a broker, Michelle Rapiza, who is super professional, and both of them had our best interests at heart 100% of the time. So if you're ever interested in buying or selling a boat, we highly recommend them. We feel really bad that at the end of the day, we ended up buying a for sale by owner boat and didn't get to use their services for 100% of the deal, but they've helped us with both the sale of our Leopard and in finding a new boat, and they still have our back. And that is what makes a good broker, because they're more concerned about us getting on the right boat and having a good experience and, you know, buying a safe vessel than they are about their commission check.
So the next thing to consider is what you should be thinking about and looking for when you're buying a new boat. Forgive me, Kelly's really good at speaking. I'm going to be glancing down at some notes from time to time to keep my mind on track. Number one is how you want to use the boat. You know, what are you going to do with it? How do you see yourself using the boat? Are you really adventuresome? Do you like being off-grid completely? Do you like visiting marinas and being on the dock sometimes? So that's really important to think about, is how you want to use the vessel you're purchasing, whether or not you see yourself on the dock, sailing more, moving around more. You know, those are important things to think about, and how that vessel will work for you. There's always specific features on different boats, and you should think about what is most important to you, you know, and how within how you use the boat, and keep those at the top of your mind when you're looking at boats. It's really important. Lastly is, of course, your budget. You should definitely be thinking about your budget and remember to factor in additional costs. Don't max out your budget. That's really important. All boats are going to require you tweaking it, regardless if you think it's perfect. I can almost guarantee you there will be changes you'll make to that boat based on your personal usages, and those will cost money to some degree. Let's see.
Also, just outfitting the boat's going to cost you. There's always more stuff than you think that needs to go on the boat. Anyway,
I believe I've covered the points we wanted to make. So now it's back to Kelly.
Okay, so a lot of people have been asking in the comments why we decided to sell the Leopard 62. And I guess I didn't do a very good job in the previous videos as to explaining our main reasons. We really did love the boat. We were super comfortable on that boat. I'm not sure if we could have done 100 days in the Rio Dulce on a smaller boat than that. It was very comfortable. But ultimately, we didn't see ourselves being on board that boat long term for the goals that we have for ourselves. It is a very good boat. It sails really well. It is extremely safe. I felt safe on that boat. The thing that got to us the most was just the sailability, in the sense that it's just Connor and I, and that's a 62-foot catamaran, and it's almost 30 feet wide, and it was just a lot of boat for us to manage, maintain, and we didn't feel like it was a smart decision at any point in time to try to single-handedly sail that vessel, which means that it took both of us to put up or down the mainsail, and you know, he got really seasick that one night where he had to climb up the mast about 8 feet and put in a reef, and then he got done and it was like, oh my gosh, we have to reef again, so he had to do it again. And in the dark of night where you can't see the horizons or the waves and you're going back and forth,
Especially when you're like having to focus on a task, I found, I don't really have a problem with seasickness, but in the dark, when you really have to focus on something in almost an emergency state, it really got to me.
Yeah, and so he got really sick, which left me at the helm by myself for a lot longer period than I would like to be at the helm in any weather situation. And it got us both to thinking, like, what if something happened? Like, what if one of us went overboard? Like, what if he went overboard? Would I be able to man that boat by myself? Would I be able to turn around and do a man overboard on that boat by myself? Could I get my kids back to safety? And it started creating a little bit of doubt. And I wanted to have a boat where I felt like I could do everything if I needed to. I didn't want to put 100% responsibility on Connor for all of those things. I just don't think that's smart, for one, and I also think it's unfair.
And unsafe.
And unsafe, yeah. But so that was the number one reason. The other reason was just we decided to live the boat life because we wanted to enjoy the life, which meant when we got to places, we wanted to go exploring or swimming or diving or check out the culture or meet with other boaters. On that boat, we felt like we always had a big chore list, and I know that you do on any boat. We're not being unrealistic about that, but polishing all the stainless steel on a 62-foot catamaran is a lot more work than doing it on a 30 or 40-foot boat. There were 5 cabins, 2 of which we never even used. So that kind of seemed ridiculous, especially when we meet other boaters and their kids are sharing rooms and they have stuff maxed out to the gills and they had no extra space. And in our mind, we thought, hey, we're coming from an affluent area with lots of friends who could probably afford to travel, visit us. He had parents who were still in good health. My parents are still in good health. And we figured, yeah, they're going to come visit us and we're going to do all these things and it's going to be great to have these 2 extra rooms. Well, we've been on the boat for 9 months and we had 1 visitor and it was a single guy. So he didn't even need a room to come visit us. And we've also realized, like, our kids are kids. Like, they can go sleep on the trampoline, they can share a room, they can sleep in a hammock, they can sleep on the floor. Like, they're gonna be fine. And just the bigger the boat, the more stuff you end up accumulating that you don't really need. And it just kind of complicates your life in unnecessary ways when we're trying to simplify. Do you want to talk about just like the overall maintenance of the systems? Because that was another issue for us.
I would say, yeah, having so many air conditioning units and the way that boat
7
was set up, more for charter and not live aboard, created a lot more work. And like I remember running into previous crew on that boat. They would spot us in Guatemala randomly. Someone would come up and be like, I know that boat. I crewed on that boat 20 years ago or whatever it was. And their first comment was, man, that boat has a lot of systems. Like, how do you maintain all that? And, coming from a construction background, I don't feel like it was that bad because I was used to kind of doing a lot of different things as a general contractor, but it was more than I wanted. It definitely was just more than I wanted, And another thing I'll bring up is going with that boat's so big, it definitely adds a lot more cost that you have to factor in. A boat over 50 feet exponentially grows costs. Those sails are much bigger, the lines are much bigger, the dockage fees are much more, everything's more. And when you add all that up, it really comes into play. Do you really want to have all those extra costs? You can either be saving on those costs and making your adventure last longer or do more things that you want to with your family, or those costs can go into your vessel, and when it's going into your vessel in a way, it's just taking away from your other, budgetary costs. And you just have to be realistic with that.
And I think had our kids been older and, more interested and capable in learning to sail the boat and partaking more in some of the upkeep, it would have been a different story. they did help, but it was like an hour here and there, and it wasn't going to be that much less work for Connor and I to do because they decided to step in. It's also hard when you're hanging out with other boaters and you need a part, and all of the parts you need are, you know, blocks that are this big instead of ones that are this big. It makes it harder to share parts, find parts, which requires you having to special order them, ship them in, which also adds to the overall, you know, daily cost of living on board. But at the end of the day, we have no regrets for buying that boat. We learned a lot. It was like education by fire hose, and like, I don't know, I'm kind of amazed and I'm proud of both of us for everything that we've learned, what we've handled, how far we've sailed, the refit that we did on the boat, and all the problems we solved along the way. It didn't deter us from the boating lifestyle at all, and I think I can say I'm very proud of both of us.
Okay, so the last kind of thing we want to talk about was our new boat. Why we chose this boat that we wanted to buy, the Vision 444 ES, or they call it the 444. I really enjoy sailing, so it was tough for me. I really wanted some performance, and looking at a lot of performance catamarans out there, the livability of them, there's always a balance. So the more performance you get, the less livability. And I shouldn't say livability, it's just more sparse, tighter spaces, more basic systems, because you really have to watch the weight to get that performance. The Vision 444 ES to me was just a really, really, really good balance for what was out there. It is a light boat. It can still carry a decent payload. It single hand sails. It didn't break our budget. Just a lot of things, you know. If I look at the list we have, it has a lot of natural light, which I know Kelly likes. It has a forward-facing nav desk, which is one of the things I really like. The sport helm with the easy access, I think we both really like. It does have a workshop dedicated to storing tools and doing some work in, you know, I think was very good. Again, it sails very well. I think it sails under light winds and will keep up a good average speed. You know, I really like that. Then the construction of the boat was really good. Kelly and I have learned that some balsa cord boats, you know, we just didn't like. We didn't like a lot of things about, you know, the construction of a balsa cord boat. And
I'm going to butt in here because balsa cord boats are not bad. They use them in a lot of the production catamarans because they're heavy duty. Like, they can handle a lot more abuse, impact, heavy wear and tear, as opposed to like a foam core boat. But with that, as we found on our Leopard, if you get any type of moisture in there, you're gonna have to make some pretty costly repairs. So, and it's almost probably impossible to keep the water from intruding into the balsa cord no matter how hard you try, because things are constantly moving around on a boat. So there's gonna be play in the windows, the cleats, and whatnot, and water will find its way in there. And that's just something that we didn't really wanna deal with anymore, and they're also heavier. They're heavier vessels.
so the Vision is a foam cord infused vinyl ester resin constructed boat, which based on our research is a good construction method for what we were looking for, both light and strong, and didn't have the balsa core. All the furniture in the boat is tabbed in, creating extra structure and rigidity within the boat. So it's not like an IKEA built boat, or, you know, some people say that, which is the overall structure is built and then separately the components of cabinetry is moved in and installed. So it doesn't really add to the structure of the boat. And sometimes those boats will creak more or less because the boat flexes and isn't so rigid. The Vision is extremely rigid, and from what we've seen, does not creak at all, and is extremely solid, which we really like. Next would be the systems, which I really like. The Vision is thought out in a way where the systems are all in their own locker and not down in the bilges.
I guess I would like to add that one of the other reasons we like the Vision was that we feel that these boats were really designed and set up with the cruiser lifestyle in mind. They weren't built and designed for the charter life or the person who just wants to sail a few weeks out of the year in the Caribbean. They were really meant to be more self-sufficient, self-contained vessels that you could circumnavigate the globe if you wanted.
Yeah. I know I mentioned, I might be repeating myself, but I'm going to start with the helm has really good visibility, and it's an outboard helm or sport helm, which Kelly and I both like, over the flybridge. Originally, I didn't think I'd like a flybridge. Turns out I did like it on the Big Lost, but for personal reasons, I just think the sport helm, being able to single hand and have better access to the boom and mainsail if you needed it, was a better option for us, for safety, mostly. I know that the Vision is also very set up, very efficient electrical systems. It already has enough solar and batteries to be pretty much self-sufficient, which I think is great. It has good storage, good refrigeration, and it still has a shallow draft. I think one of the reasons that is because of the equipment lockers. It keeps a lot of the equipment out of the bilge, which allows you to not quite have as deep a bilge as you normally would need. The Vision also has a bunch of watertight bulkheads through the bilge because it doesn't require that space to hide a bunch of its equipment. Another safety feature.
And I think, more on a personal level, everybody we've met who's owned a Vision has been wildly happy with them. They have a great owners community and an app, and all of the owners seem to be very well connected. The manufacturer appears to be very involved in the ongoing success of these boats and making sure that their owners are happy. And there seems to be like a pretty open line of communication, which we appreciate too. Granted, we have not used this boat yet, so we'll see if that holds true. But I'm very happy that Connor will no longer have to be contorting himself to get into some of these lockers to work on a generator or an engine or something like that. I always wish I could help more in that regard, but I didn't know what I was doing.
I'll be happy to share with you guys in person on the boat what we're kind of lining out here and describing. I can't wait.
And also, we're not experts. I mean, we've just started being cruisers, and we're just sharing with you our own opinions and what we've learned. We understand that not everybody's going to agree with us, but if you would like to know more or get our opinions on something, we're always happy to share. So feel free to leave those questions in the comments or send us a DM on social media. We really love connecting with you all. As always, thank you for being a part of our journey. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, drop us a comment below with your thoughts or questions, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's next, because the adventure is just getting started. See you soon. From land for now, but not for long.